Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. Now, one of the many reasons that I love recording this podcast every day is being able to take an area that we know very well in life, or we think we know, and then take a peek behind the curtain to see what really goes on behind the scenes. And I think it's fair to say that curiosity has always been my biggest compass in life. And I am the geeky IT guy looking for wireless arrays when I'm in a public building, such as a concert hall or a stadium. So today I want to speak with 10-8 Systems about the world of cloud-based computer-aided dispatch systems that often frequent governments and security agency. But I don't want to reveal too much just yet, so buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to California, where Kevin is waiting to speak with us and share his story and explain how 10-8 dispatch systems are revolutionising public safety through technology and modern solutions. So a massive warm welcome to the show, Kevin. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Thanks for having me. My name's Kevin Ruef. I'm with a company called 10-8 Systems. My background is primarily in sales, whether it's B2B, B2G, B2C, and a little bit of everything in between. I was working up in the Silicon Valley area for a few years with some of the largest companies in the world in the industrial automation space. And then I had the opportunity to work with my brother and bring some revolutionary technology to the public safety world.
I'd love to hear more about that story. But before we do, for people hearing about 10-8 Systems for the very first time, can you tell me exactly what it is and maybe expand on the kind of problems that you're solving for your customers, but with technology?
Sure. At a really high level, we offer a complete and budget-friendly computer-aided dispatch and record management solution for public safety. Now, to put that into layman's terms, our system helps take the information received if there's some sort of emergency incident or aid requirement. We assign that to officers or people or vehicles out in the field. And then our system keeps track of everything from the initial call all the way to the end. We timestamp everything, we keep track of everything. And this helps not only for internal auditing purposes, but it also allows public safety to get to where they're needed that much quicker.
And I've got to ask, what is the story behind the company? Because you mentioned there you joined forces with your brother and there's a lot of opportunities there and wanted to revolutionise the world with technology. So what is the story there?
So it's kind of a funny story. Brian, he spent years in public safety from a young age. He started as a police explorer. And for those of you that aren't familiar with that, it's basically a program where kids starting in high school are able to volunteer with the sheriff's department or the police departments. They go to an academy. They do everything from doing ride-alongs to even getting maced in the face to get the experience of it. And on those ride-alongs, he did everything from vehicles to boats to helicopter ride-alongs. And then he moved into the EMT industry in the field as well as a dispatcher. And at the time, he saw that there were clearly some lapses in the technology. When he would work with the local county sheriff, which is a pretty huge one here in California, as well as the US, it was pretty much a coin flip if their software was going to work. And at the beginning of the day, they would say, well, it's either going to work or it isn't. And if it didn't work, they would throw it back into the trunk. And it was pretty scary to think that one of the more well-funded departments in the US didn't have a reliable system. At the same time, he was also participating in these large online gaming type role play groups where there were some real law enforcement or junior individuals that wanted to practice things like etiquette, call signs, radio call signs, whatever it may be. And that grew to having over 60,000 active users on it daily. And when we went in there to go audit some of the users and activity, we found out that there were some real police departments animal control services, ambulance companies, towing companies that were trying to use this platform that was really meant for gaming and just for fun. So between seeing the gap in the market firsthand and then seeing the online demand, that's kind of where 10.8 Systems was born and really grew from there.
I love that. And getting maced in the face just to see how it feels. Is that really a thing? Did that happen?
They do that to the explorers, and they do that to the people that go to the academy. Because if you're going to distribute that kind of affection, you got to make sure that you can take it first.
Wow. Does that happen with tasers as well? Sorry to go off topic here, but you got me curious.
A lot of them will do that. A lot of them also view that as kind of a rite of passage. So the new person will get a nice tase to the rear. I've firsthand seen that a couple times. And there's almost nothing funnier than seeing someone that's over 6 feet tall and be really tough until the moment that those two barbs hit them in the back, and seeing them just go stiff as a board as they slowly fall forward, and someone usually catches them on the way.
Oh, so funny. Well, in more serious matters, I did read that your CAD system was used in 2019 by FEMA in the Bahamas during Hurricane Dorian. So with the help of your system, search and rescue were then able to rescue over 500 people that were stranded. So can I ask that you share that story? Because again, it's incredibly exciting how technology is actually helping people here.
It was an incredibly rewarding experience. We were being used by several law enforcement agencies, EMS, public safety across the country, and we were introduced to this group, Florida Search and Rescue, as well as a few others, and they worked very tightly with FEMA to be the boots on the ground, be those first responders in the case of these large-scale natural disasters. And when we were initially introduced, we found out very quickly that their existing technology, record keeping, and resources was almost non-existent. They were still using pen and paper. They were still using Excel documents to keep track of things. And we were able to bring in some more organization for them. They were able to get access to our system on, I believe it was a Thursday afternoon. And by Friday morning, they were already dispatching units out in the field. Which in this industry, that's usually a system that takes anywhere from months to a year to get people fully up and running. So we were quickly up and running. Their existing communications on the ground also went out, and they were able to rely on the redundancy in our system to communicate back with land. And we heard some incredible rescue stories. There was a group that was in a church. The ceiling collapsed on them. And the flood levels were rising. There was a few other houses where they had to bring people in. There was a baby born in the middle of the rescues, where we were actually reading the comments and heard the story afterwards, where the water level was all the way up to the kitchen counter height. So they started trying to deliver a baby on a table, ended up going to a counter, and by the time the helicopter showed up, there was a new baby that they were also able to rescue. So it was very rewarding, but also very eye-opening to see that they were kind of going in there with one arm tied behind their back, in a sense.
And before you came on the podcast today, I was doing a bit of research on you guys. I also learned that you sell to security and government agencies. So can you expand on that a little for me and the kind of work that you're doing there?
Sure. So for security companies, we've worked with the benefit of dealing with these newer cloud-based systems is our system can be deployed very quickly and across large geographical areas. So we've been working with some nationwide GSOC centers or command centers. And also the government is using some, let's just say, antiquated and overpriced solutions. And the fact that they've had some of these deployments, maybe anywhere from 10 to 20 years ago, some of it moves at a glacial pace. But we've been received with open arms so far. And we found some success with the VA. We've also found some success with a few other military bases around the U.S. that have been experimenting and starting to use our system. I guess in a nutshell, that's kind of where we found some success with security as well as the government agencies that I'm allowed to talk about, at least.
And do you have any, I don't know, use cases or examples that you could share about 10.8 systems, dispatch systems, that would just help people listening how it's revolutionising public safety through these modern solutions and through technology ultimately?
Like I said earlier, usually these systems are found to be incredibly expensive, which obviously, with a lot of the attention being brought with the funding of law enforcement, especially here in the US and around the world, there's obviously being some scrutiny on the overall cost of these systems. In addition to the upfront costs, there's also typical requirements of months of training, as well as credentials or recertifications each year, which can cost anywhere from a couple thousand to a couple $100,000 a year for various departments. On top of that, most traditional CAD or record systems also require some kind of on-site hosting. You need to provide hardware, infrastructure, you need a database admin, an IT person. It starts to get pretty complicated and convoluted of the requirements for some of these older school systems. With us being able to take advantage of the newer cloud technologies, not only is the cost significantly lower, but it also gives us quite a few redundancies. We have backups, we have failovers all across the country, and these are things that simply weren't available even in the last 10 to 20 years. And when you start to take a look at some of these decision makers for the current departments, a lot of them are kind of older school management at this point. They've used paper, they've used basic systems, and they don't want to rock the boat, especially if they're potentially a few years away from retirement. So we're finding that a lot of the younger management, the newer people that are coming through that are putting a focus on analytics, being able to have documentation, being able to hold all officers, all people in the field liable for their timestamps, for their historical locations. These are all things that at the moment are very new to the industry, but are really going to influence where we think all technology is going to go for public safety. More transparency and more accountability.
And for any techies that might be listening to the podcast today, what is the technology that makes all this possible for you at 10.8 Systems?
So without going into too many things that our developers would get upset with me on, the big core feature that we focus on is the fact that our system is cloud native and that our entire system is built on a fully responsive design. What that means is we get to take advantage of AWS, our entire system sitting on AWS GovCloud. That particular type of hosting is the same that's used by like the DoD, DOJ, all the alphabet soup here in the US, which means it's secure and there's multiple redundancies on it. And when we talk about being fully responsive, that means the system can be accessed on any internet-enabled device. We're talking cell phone, laptop, tablet. We were able to access the full system from the center console of a Tesla not too long ago. So really that flexibility means there's also not any hardware requirements. So it'll automatically resize for any device. We don't need to have individual apps created for everything. And for those techies that are out there that are also starting or thinking about doing anything like this, we found our most success in just keeping it simple. For things that are outside of our immediate lane or our core competency that we focus on, we've also really focused on strategic partners. So we are happy to let other people do things way better than we could or want to put the focus on. So we've also had a lot of partners that have made a lot of this possible.
And I suspect for most people listening, including myself here, a lot of what we're talking about today is a part of a world that we never actually see what goes on behind the curtain. So I'm curious, as someone that's working right in the heart of all this, how much have you seen technology change with computer-aided dispatch software over the years? If we were to look at, I don't know, 5 years ago to now, presumably things have changed greatly. Is that right?
Absolutely. But when you look at the overall distribution for size of departments, versus the total departments in the US. Something like 80% of departments here in the US for public safety have less than 20 officers. So we're talking, for the most part, small departments, which means small budgets. So even today, there's a lot of departments through not only the US, but we've spoken with departments in Australia, throughout the UK, South Africa, even down through South America. They're still putting a large focus on pen and paper. If you wanted to look up a file, you go to a physical file cabinet. This is still happening today. There's still departments that are small, less than 3 or 4 deputies or officers in this department that are using Excel documents to keep track of what's happening and where people are. So, and the big issue is they've traditionally been outpriced with what's available in the market. So when you look at the traditional systems and the traditional cost of these, without receiving a grant or sacrificing multiple police officers to afford some software, this hasn't been available. And as cloud options become more available and become far more price effective, we're seeing a lot of these smaller departments starting to be able to share information, keep track of records, people's names, whatever it may be. And this transition is still very slow. The vast majority of the systems being used are still anywhere from 10 to 30 years old. So it's a very old school industry that I think over the next 10 to 15 years is going to see a total revamp. But right now we're really on the cutting edge of the options.
Yeah, and it really feels like there's a real desire and thirst for change at the moment, and the digitisation of everything, of course. So if we do dare look into the future a little bit more, what's next for 10.8 Systems? I appreciate you probably can't share too much, don't want to upset your developers again, but is there anything you can share?
So, as I mentioned, we're putting a large focus on traceability. Traceability is this magic word from this industry to the manufacturing industry, everywhere, where there's a large focus on analytics. So we're having a large focus on statistical outputs, different analytics and options that are available to not only the public, but to management, internal admins, whatever it may be. And on top of that, like I kind of alluded to earlier, we have some amazing partnerships. We have some incredible add-ons and options that are going to be available to our existing and future clients. And really what that allows us to be is kind of a single vendor platform, since we're able to take all these other partner platforms and offerings and tie them all into one system. So we are kind of focusing on being that one-stop shop from everything from volunteer search and rescue all the way up to large-scale government law enforcement, private security, and really everything in between.
And obviously I'm talking to you in California today. Is it just the US that you serve, or do you serve beyond that as well?
We've been used internationally. Our main focus is here on the US, but we can absolutely be used anywhere in the world that there's internet.
Well, for anyone listening that would like to just find out a little bit more information of the work that you're doing and how it might actually work in their world and upgrade their systems, what's the best way of finding you online and equally contacting your team if they just want to continue the conversation?
Absolutely. So you can find us online at 1010-8 systems. So 10.8 systems with an S.com. You can also reach out to me on LinkedIn. The name is Kevin, Kevin, Ruef, Ruef, F as in Frank. Feel free to reach out to me there, or you can reach out to me on my work email at kevinr@10.8systems.com.
Excellent. Well, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to come on here. I, for one, have learned so much in this 25 minutes that we've spent together, and I'm sure everyone listening will. And at the end of it all, I might even go on YouTube and look for people being tasered or mace in the face. You've set me off there. But more than anything, of course, just for sharing your story and explaining how 10-8 systems and your dispatch systems are revolutionising public safety all through technology. It's fantastic what you're doing. So thanks for sharing that with me today.
Thanks, Dale. I appreciate it.
How cool was that? Not just these stories of mace in the face or getting tasered, but the tech systems that are helping search and rescue teams to rescue over 500 people stranded due to Hurricane Dorian. And I feel like I've learned loads today, but I'd love to hear more about how you or your country are using similar technology in the same way or even different ways. So please, I'll throw this microphone over to you. There's a seat waiting for you on the podcast, or if you'd just like to send me a quick comment or question, email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com. My website is techblogwriter.co.uk. Remember, it's you that brings this show to life and the reason why I record it every day. So keep those messages, comments and pictures to come on the show coming over, and I'll be back same time, same place tomorrow. So a big thank you for listening as always, and until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.